Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Yak Legion Podcast with Zach and Brad Hicks. How's it going, guys? We got Joshua Eldridge on tonight for our Knights of the Round Table discussion. We'll be talking about fishing, anything else, kind of an anything goes type of podcast tonight, I guess. Justin couldn't make it. We really don't know what his story is, but kind of ditching us on the podcast there, brother. So how you guys doing today, man? I know you guys been out there fishing all day. Fished that Strictly Sail tournament, the Cincinnati Kayak fishing tournament.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
it was fun. Yep.
Nice, man. What'd you guys place?
I placed 11th out of 34.
And I was 13th.
Nice, man. Top 20, man. That's awesome. I know I fished the Buckeye Kayak Fishing Trail Rocky Fork tournament yesterday. And it was originally supposed to be in Payton Creek, and we've had a lot of rain here in southwest Ohio. I think all of Ohio is flooded. And so they ended up moving it to Rocky Fork because Payton Creek is a flood control lake. So I kind of had a game plan for Payton Creek, and it kind of ruined my game plan when they moved it to the lake. I've only fished Rocky Fork maybe twice before, one other time on a kayak. And it was a tough day, man. I know several guys out there came home with empty bags. It took me all day to catch the one fish that I did catch, which was 13 and a half largemouth bass, I'm sorry. I got docked an inch because the mouth was partially open. And, so, that's on my fault. I should have held my hand on the fish and kind of pressed his lips up against the side of my my hog trough and maybe got a better pick. But it is what it is. Some of those bass is hard to get their mouth closed, you know what I mean? So you just kind of gotta try the best you can to get the mouth closed in the picture, and obviously make sure that your identifier is clearly seen. But that was a fun event. We met up at Big City Pizza out in Greenfield afterwards for the measure in, and we all got a 10% discount on pizza. They did a little raffled away a few things. Sean Stone ended up winning the tournament. He's a big musky fisher out there at Rocky Fork. I heard he practically lives on Rocky Fork. And I've seen he catches some big freaking carp from local lakes. He catches some big muskie. I mean, the guy looks like he fishes for a living. I don't know what his day job is, but seems like one of them guys that's always out on the water. You can't, I don't know, maybe he's not married. Maybe, I don't know the story behind him, but I know for married men like us, it's kind of hard to get out all the time.
Yeah.
Like some of these guys practically live on the water. But how'd your weekend go, man? What did you guys use today to come up with some bass?
I'll let Josh go first.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I started out with old trusty, which was a 3.8 Kayak. I've been throwing them into rivers like crazy, or the white ones. And where we were fishing at, it was still muddy. And so I was trying to work the weed lines with that bait and was getting no bites. And one of the guys I was fishing with told me his name's Jeff Durbin. He's like, hey, go throw over by that pipe over there. It's got clean water coming out. There's probably a fish over there. So I threw a jig. I had a swim jig tied on from my last river trip. It was just a green pumpkin with a little black in it. I had a double-tailed grub on it. I ended up dipping in chartreuse because I was too lazy to switch over to black and blue, which would have probably been better just because of the watercolor. Threw that at that water pipe, and it was literally just 6 inches from the water pipe and maybe 6 inches of water, and got my first fish. It was about a 12 and a quarter, I think. Something like that. And I didn't catch any other fish for the next 2 to 3 hours.
Oh,
wow. I got to the other end of the lake where the wind was blowing the hardest and started finding some more weed lines. There was a lot of, the water was actually up there about 2 feet also. And I think I started throwing in kind of like weedy area where it's like segmented. It was like clumps, big clumps, not like where the whole bank is lined with it. And I kept getting hit where those little, those breaks in the weeds were. And eventually I caught a 17, I caught a 10 and a quarter, and then I think a 13 or 14 and a quarter. The 17 saved me. I'd have been pretty low on that list without that fish. So
It was a
It
nice
was kind of
fish.
fun. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Jeff was right there. He watched me catch it and was laughing at me because I don't have a net right now from where I lost it on that Smalley trip. And so he's laughing at me trying to lip this fish without losing it. And then I literally caught one on my next cast, or maybe 2 casts later, in the same general area. But I made a big rookie mistake, and I moved on. And I went to fish the other weed lines, and I should have stayed in that 100 yards, 200-yard section.
Yeah.
What were you throwing about those fish?
What was I? What?
What were you throwing?
Oh, it's a jig, like a swim jig.
Oh, what color?
Green pumpkin with a little bit of black in it, and then I had just a regular green pumpkin double tail grub on it, and I dipped the tails in chartreuse dye so it could show
really?
up. Yeah.
I always wondered about that stuff.
It works great. Not all the colors do. Not all the colors dye real well, so you got to be kind of weary about it. Some of them are really, really easy. For some, like green pumpkin, which you wouldn't think is going to dye well, actually does. If you try to dye white, though, it looks really awkward.
That's weird. I know I saw this weekend, I don't know if you guys are familiar with boomerang snips or not. Have you ever heard of those?
Mm-mm.
They're like braided snips, and they're the best snips I've ever had. But anyway, they have like a little light that pairs with that dye stuff you're talking about, and it's supposedly after you dye it and like the dye is starting to dye, you charge it with the light that's on it. I don't know how it works exactly, but I thought it was cool.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I guess I can get into what I did for the tournament, unless you had a little bit more to say about what you were doing today.
No, that was it.
How do you work your jigs? You just swim along, you just casting, you're reeling in, or where are you tossing your jigs, and how are you working them?
I was going directly down the bank. So
parallel?
It was kind of, parallel with it. And I was actually getting, because I don't have a pedal drive, I have a Jackson Kusa, and the wind is blowing me into the bank. So a lot of times I was throwing just parallel and trying to throw as close to the weeds as I could. I was throwing about a foot off. That way I wasn't pulling too much weed through. I wanted to touch the weeds. I just didn't want to dig into them. And I had actually had more success though when I made a turn around a bend and I started going into the wind is where I started catching more fish. And then there was one of those, I don't know, this probably had something to do with it, why the fish might have been kind of grouped in this area, but there was one of those big drainage things. Brad, you might be familiar with it. I think they have one at Carriage Hill, those big square concrete things. It's got the grating all the way. Around it. Yeah, and I think that causes current sometimes in that area that's a little stronger than the rest of the lake, but I'm not 100% sure if that's what played a part. But I just would literally I just threw along the weed lines, but I kept getting hit in the little gaps. And I would just I'd swim it through, rip it through the grass. If I hit like a patch of grass, I'd pull it through real hard and then let it settle again and bounce it a couple times, hit grass, yank it through. So,
yeah, that's something like I've actually started doing when we were fishing the river a few weeks ago, and I saw you pulling it through the grass like that. Those little pockets that are empty and there's like no grass right there, but there's grass surrounding it. It seems like that's like the perfect place to throw like topwater or any of those swim jigs. It seems like the smallmouth are always sitting in that spot.
Yeah, it's a good ambush point.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when there's current right next to that. It's just shooting right across the grass. It's perfect.
Yeah, and the way the wind was blowing, Brad, it reminded me of the river because the wind was blowing down that bank into my face. So, like, the water's actually technically moving like a river would along that weed bank. Instead of directly into the weeds, it was moving along the side of it, parallel with it. So
that's interesting. So, like, trying to find the parallel in between like rivers and lakes like that, and then like finding like an application where you can use your river knowledge on a lake to catch fish. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it worked out. I caught a decent fish. I just made a mistake. I shouldn't have left the area. Left the area. I was like, well, if the weeds are where it's at, then I'm literally circling this lake, throwing at every weed bed on there, and I should have probably just stayed where I was catching fish for a while. So
yeah, that's cool,
good,
man.
Thanks for being descriptive on that. So Brad, today, what I know you were pretty successful with the chatterbait, right?
I killed it with the chatterbait today, dude.
His new nickname's Chatterbait.
Yeah, we're gonna call you Chatterbait Brad, man.
It's been my go-to this year, man. I don't even. It won me the first tournament, and then today I ended up catching 18 largemouth on the chatterbait, and then caught 4 other white bass. But we'll get into that later. But the largemouth, basically, I was throwing right up against riprap, or like any anomaly I'd see on the bank, like say you see like wood, and then you see like a little small section of riprap. That's where I would throw. And there was one spot that I just saw it. It looked like the Holy Grail. I was like, man, it's just like a 5-foot section of riprap right in between a bunch of wood. And I was like, man, this looks so good. I'm going to catch fish here. And a couple casts later, I caught a fish. A couple more casts, I caught another fish. I think I ended up catching 4 fish in that one spot. It was like a 5-foot span of water right there on the chatterbait.
Wow.
All right, so the chatterbait I was using was the Project Z black and blue with the black and blue Turbo Crawl Z-Man trailer. And reason why I was using that was because the water was super muddy. And well, it wasn't super muddy, but it was stained. It wasn't like, it was a good stain. Like, I felt confident throwing anything there, actually, but
yeah.
Let me see. I'm trying to think.
How deep were those fish, Brad?
Probably 3 to 5 feet, I'm guessing.
How far off the bank?
The first 4 were probably anywhere from 5 to 10 feet off the bank.
Oh wow!
I did notice a pattern as the day went on, though. They were hiding in the shade under bushes, so I would have to skip that thing under there, and I'd get nailed almost immediately doing that.
Yeah.
And that water was probably 1 to 3 feet deep in that area. So,
and it ended up being a lot sunnier today than I think we all anticipated.
Oh yeah, it was a beautiful day. I mean, I was expecting rain, and what I'm seeing outside the window now, cloudy and rainy, and I didn't know what to expect. So I definitely didn't expect to catch 18 largemouth today. That's for sure.
I don't think you've ever had a day that good, have you?
I have on the river, but never on a lake, especially Cowan Lake. But yeah, I kind of I feel like I'm starting to like
it.
No, I'm starting to learn the lake a little bit. Like after watching all these videos and learning how to fish a lake, I think I'm starting to connect the dots a little bit. But
hey, Zach, he's starting to get a secret love affair with Cowan. He won't admit it, man. We were at the meeting afterwards, and I'm like, he's talking about it, and I'm like, you're going to like this lake eventually. It's going to be his spot. He's going to be like, hey, guys, let's go to Cowan.
It probably will be. Who knows? I don't know.
I'm surprised you went to Cowan today. As many trips have we made to Cowan this year.
I know, man.
It's a good lake. It's worth going back, man.
Yeah, I had nowhere. I had no idea where else I wanted to go. I mean, everything else is muddy and blown out, and
Every text message is like, we'll go anywhere but Cowan. Now he's going to be like, let's go to Cowan. I'm going to show you guys up, man.
I still rather, like, I'm a guy that wants to check out new places and try new things. So Cowan Lake, I grew up going to Cowan Lake quite a bit, so that plays a reason why I don't really care for it that much.
Yeah. Just burn out on it, I guess, right? But it's been good to you, man. So did you just use the chatterbait, or did you try some other things? Or did you just go with that chatterbait since it was producing the fish?
I threw the chatterbait all day pretty much. And then until about, 1:30, me and my buddy Chris came across white bass, like destroying bait on the surface. It was ridiculous. We were sitting right in the middle of this creek mouth, and they were just busting all around us. So I had a great idea. I was like, why don't we throw our topwater out there? He was like, that's a good idea. Let's do it. 3 or 4 cast in, like he already has like three white bass pulled into his boat, and I have one on the line, and I think we put in 15 and 20 minutes just sitting there chasing them into the middle of the lake. They did start running into the middle of the lake, and that kind of got a little weird because it was really windy and all the sailboats were out on the lake. So we were trying to dodge all these sailboats, and we were catching white bass in the middle of all these people, and they probably thought we were crazy, but it was a blast, dude. Today was one of my favorite trips I ever had.
So you caught on those white bass? You caught them on the chatterbait too?
No, I caught them on topwater. The whopper.
Oh, okay. What were you throwing on topwater?
Whopper plopper.
Whopper plopper? Okay. Where were you catching those at? Like towards the middle of the lake, on the edge, like towards the bank, off the points?
This one, those were they started off in the middle of the creek mouth, and then they started moving out towards the middle of the lake.
Okay.
So
it was fun, don't they?
Yeah. Like
all
within seconds.
Yeah.
Within seconds, they're moving like 60 yards. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like we had a hard time like keeping them located, but.
So were you seeing them on your fish finder, or did you actually see them like at the top of the water?
I was marking stuff on the fish finder, but we saw them just hitting the bait on the surface, so we decided to ditch the largemouth and start fishing for the white bass.
Oh, okay, good deal, good deal. Yeah, that's great, man. I mean, we've dealt with a lot of rain. We hadn't had a normal summer here in Southwest Ohio. A lot of our lakes are flooded. The rivers are blown out. All the water's muddy. There was some clear water at Rocky Fork yesterday. And I grinded all day yesterday for a fish. And what I noticed was when I was out there, I saw guys going up and they're burning up the bank. They're using worms, flukes. I've seen a lot of people using soft plastics in that part of the lake because it was so grassy. Mm-hmm. I threw on one of them turtles, man, and they're the same turtles Chad Hoover was endorsing a while back ago. And I had one that was June bug color on the top of its shell. Then the bottom of him was copper. And I noticed when I cast that out, man, that copper bottom, man, that really shines when you get especially the sun come out a little bit. Like that sun catches that copper and it really shines in the water. And I had caught that bass, a 13 and a half, just right off a bank that I'd seen get hit all morning. We had 3 tournaments going on. We had the Buckeye Trail tournament. I know there was 2 bass boat tournaments going on. I caught that fish and I looked up and there was 4 freaking bass boats around me. I was like, holy crap. I'm out here on the Hobie and I'm surrounded by bass boats. But, man, it was a lot of fun, though. I mean, it was nice to get out there on the water. It rained on us a little bit. I had to break out the poncho and the rain gear for a little while. And I saw a snapping turtle come up out of the water. And I said, hee, Mr. Snapping Turtle, I see we can't play with you. So I took my, I think I had a tube on. I was throwing a tube for a little while. And I chucked that sucker probably 15 so yards and landed right on the top of his shell. But bing! Man, he freaked out, man. He took off like a bat out of hell. I never seen a snapping turtle move that fast. And that's getting me excited because, July 1st here in Ohio, snapping turtle season opens. And it's going to be a good one, man. I'm going to go out and set my hoop net, set my bank lines. Going to catch some freaking snapping turtles off my Hobie. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah,
exactly. How long do you leave those out when you set them out?
You got to set them you got to check them every 24 hours. So I set them, I check them every day, and I usually set for 2 or 3 days. If I don't catch anything within 2 or 3 days, I move. Just depends on what area I'm in. I've set them out in those big marshes, wildlife area marshes and ponds, and there's a lot of big turtles out there. I actually wrote an essay to Kayak Bass Angler magazine, and I'm kind of hoping that it gets to them and they maybe publish it. But I talk about my battle with my white whale of a turtle, Big Bertha, this giant, enormous freaking turtle. And I went out there the summer of 2017 and I was using bank lines. And I was taking my kayak, my Perception Striker, and I was paddling out to the center islands on the marsh. And this marsh is 29 acres, so it's not huge, but it's a pretty big marsh. It's got islands, just covered in poison ivy. So I was setting bank lines out there. We caught some decent turtles. Well, me and my buddy Wes, he was running lines with me. We went out there one day and had the biggest turtle I'd ever seen. Wide shell, just ginormous turtle, and big snapper. So I was pulling up on the line, and I was kind of got excited, I think, and I was just trying to get her up on the bank. She dug her feet into the ground like a dinosaur, man, and just yanked back on that line as far as she could, as hard as she could, and snapped it. And then she disappeared into the blackness. So, man, that was like, that was the biggest turtle I'd ever seen, the biggest turtle I'd ever had on my line. And, man, my heart was racing. I got excited, and I lost her. So we tried for a couple more weeks. We couldn't ever get her to hit again. So the next summer, 2018, I stepped up my game. I got hoop net turtle traps. And these, I don't know, they're probably about 4 or 5 foot long. They're designed to where fish can float out of them, like small slider turtles can float out of them, but it's designed to catch snapping turtles and leatherback turtles. So I ran my lines up there. I didn't run any lines, but I ran my trap line. I ran my hoop nets, and I finally got her about a week and a half after setting them. And it was awesome. She was a hell of a turtle. I got she's on my YouTube video. If you check out Zach Carell on YouTube, you can see my see me pulling in that turtle and seeing me taking her out. And I put her in a plastic tote, and the same plastic tote I've had hundreds of turtles in, and the she bulged the sides of the tote out. Like she was so big that she fit the whole bottom of the plastic tote and bulged it out. And man, that was awesome. I mean, it's awesome.
I think I remember seeing that picture too.
Yeah. That was last year. I was posting them on Facebook, and I got my video on YouTube about it. And man, that was a hell of an adventure. But she was a white whale to me. I was like Captain Ahab, man. And I kept going after her. I kept thinking about her. I kept thinking about that turtle since I lost her. And I finally went back and I got her, and it was awesome.
See, listeners, you can do a lot more than just fish out of a kayak, man. Zach's just he's the man about it. I know you have like episodes planned where you want to talk about all that stuff. I personally don't know much about it, but I'm definitely willing to like stick with it and like kind of learn about it. I don't know if I'll ever get out there with you.
I'll have to take you out on the line sometime, man. I'd like to see you pull the snapping turtles out of my nets. You're trying to pull one out, and there's 3 others in there snapping at you.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that sounds crazy, man.
They're not so bad. The snapping turtles I kind of got used to. It's the soft shells, because soft shells are fast, and they zip back and forth back in those nets, and they got sharp, nasty bite on them. And I've been afraid to death of them things biting me. I always get real nervous when I get a soft shell in my trap, because they're just so fast. They're so slippery. They're hard to grab. Like a snapping turtle, man, you reach in there, you get him turned around, and you grab him by the tail, and you put your hand kind of right under where his tail is, kind of back to where he can't bite you, and you got to pull them out of the traps like that. But when you got a soft shell turtle, they don't have much of a tail on them. They got a real slim and slender shell. And I almost got to take pliers. I've used pliers before, or vice grips, and just clamp down on the back of their shell and just pull them out of the trap like that into my plastic tote.
Heck yeah! I remember when I first started the fishing the river 6 years ago, maybe. Me and Justin would go out there and fish for catfish and stuff, and we'd pull out eastern softshell turtles all the time. I got a picture. I got a picture of him holding an eastern softshell turtle, and he looks like he's like so bummed out that it was a turtle. It's hilarious. But anyway, I guess we could segue out of this and then go into, I don't know, some river tactics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I had a game for us tonight, actually, and I want to get into it in a second. I wanted to mention our giveaway we're about to do.
Oh yeah,
we're about to do a contest on our social media, probably on Instagram and Facebook. We don't really have the contest rules set up yet, but we got a nice supply of tackle to give away. Thanks to Loveland Canoe and Kayak. Those guys sent us some stuff to give away for our podcast. So that's pretty awesome, man. I know we're just getting started. This will be our 5th episode in. And we've kind of had some bumps, we've had some bruises, but we're keep going, and we're all about keeping Yak Legion alive. And but anyway, we'll go into that on our social media. We'll post a picture of what we're giving away, and I'm looking forward to seeing if we can't get some followers with it.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely promote it on my page too. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yes, just check us out on Facebook. It's the Yak Legion Podcast on Facebook. We're also on Instagram at the Yak Legion Podcast. We're also on YouTube at the Yak Legion Podcast. The next thing I wanted to go into is I kind of thought of a game we could start playing. It's called like bass fishing role play. I know I'm not talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, that's it right there. That's the stuff we're supposed to give away. A little bit of everything. I see there's soft plastics, what looks like maybe chatterbait. I know Josh knows about what they're giving away.
Yeah, I could go over some of it real quick. We got a couple different kinds of worms. They kind of look like sort of like trick worms. Some smaller style Senko baits. They're just like probably like a 4-inch stick bait. Some big bite baits. It looks like I got the 5-inch battle bug. These are probably good for lakes, a little big for the river. Some smart bomb. I don't know if you guys, or smart baits, you guys heard of this company yet? So Smart Baits is a company that makes these color changing baits supposedly. And so these colors switch up when they get in the water. So they've got some worms. Kind of looks like a trick worm. It's almost like a worm with a fluky tail on the back.
It looks like a Berkeley power worm kind of.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys can see it, but the color that it is, this color looks like a green pumpkin and red, but I have no idea what it switches to. I have another pack of these baits somewhere that tells you what it kind of changes to. It's kind of cool. I got a couple finesse jigs. Go ahead.
Are those do they change color drastically or what?
The ones that I saw, it was like significant change. It was almost like opposite of what the color is.
So like a brown would change to a white maybe?
I don't know about that. Like I saw something weird with like chartreuse, and kind of changed. I don't know. Like the little graph that was on the other one isn't on this one. I'd have to sit there. I'd have to find it to know more about it. I haven't thrown them before. All these baits are unopened, by the way. They're all brand new baits. So awesome. I got a Bagley, balsa square bill. It's a blackback chartreuse. That's a nice bait.
Hey, crankbait Johnny would like that one.
Oh yeah.
I got a Booyah white, or kind of clearish actually, clear popper here. Some Gitsit tubes, couple finesse jigs that got little crawl trailers. I picked these up. They're like kind of a cheaper jig, but in my opinion, these are awesome to throw in the river. Don't go buy expensive jigs to go lose them in the rocks. If you can go find some jigs that are like this, like I bought this pack, I think it was like $3.99 or $4.99 for 2 of them, and I lose jigs like crazy in the river. So I got a nice white chartreuse blue swim jig here. Something called the Runt, some weird crankbait thing from Ketchco. It's I got some drop shot worms here. Smithwick. Smithwick's a good company. A lot of people like their jerk baits. Smithwick jerk bait.
I got an expensive one.
Yeah, I got some swing shads for.
Oh yeah, those are awesome.
And then some worms.
Nice.
So,
you loaded whoever's going to win that up, man.
Yeah, dude. Be happy. I have a small tackle shop down here, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, I see that in the background there, man. You look like you got it going on there.
And I see you got all your rod boxes back there, or your reel boxes back there too.
Yeah. There's a few that are actually been deposited into the rivers. I keep those in case I want to sell them. A lot of people like to have the boxes with them. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do the same thing. Plus, if your reel breaks, you can send in the information. They'll give you a warranty and stuff. So.
Yeah.
All right, what was that game you were wanting to play, Zach?
Yeah, so I kind of came up with a game. It's fishing role play. What is? I'm not talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not talking about anything kinky. It's what it is. I'm going to give you a scenario, and you're going to tell me how you're going to start fishing, how you're going to dissect this body of water, what you're going to throw. Okay. So I'll start off, and I'll give you both a scenario. We'll start off with Brad and then Josh, or vice versa, and we'll go into what you guys will do. So here's scenario number one. Okay, you're on a river. It's a small river, sort of like the Little Miami River. The water temperature is 70 degrees. It's partly cloudy, so it's not all the way overcast, but overcast comes in and out during the day. How would you start your trip, and what would you throw?
I'd be definitely throwing topwater right off the bat. That's for sure.
Yeah, say you get there at sunrise, and you're right there on the water at sunrise. What are you throwing? What type of topwater?
It's going to be a white buzzbait or a white whopper plopper. And the reason why I say white is because I firmly believe that the smallmouth love white color or anything pearly. Pearly white with like a purple tint. It just seems like it works. So
gotcha. What you targeting in that river?
What kind of water?
Yeah.
Since you said the river's probably 70 degrees, I'm gonna guess it's probably like mid-spring, May maybe. I'll probably be targeting slower moving water, riprap, or like any eddies where the water's just like slowly moving next to fast current, or just like still moving water next to fast current. I will throw that topwater bait right on that seam where it looks like there's a V, and I'll just drag it back toward me. I'll throw it upstream and drag it back toward me. So that seems like it works for me.
What about you, Josh?
I'm chucking a Kayak all day long.
Oh yeah.
If it's in, I'll throw. Say if it's low light conditions, and I'll throw a white one a lot of times, or I have another color I like to throw, and especially if the water is dirty. Also, I'll throw one. It's got like a black back and like a weird clayish blue bottom. It looks just like shad that you see in the river all the time, especially kind of like the bigger shad. I'll throw it on a weighted swim bait hook a lot of times. I just had somebody make me. I was having trouble keeping my 3.8s from floating too fast, and I recently had Chris Hampton from HS&P Custom Tackle make me some 1/4 ounce 3/0 extra wide gap swim bait hooks.
Wow,
and
those are awesome.
Yeah, dude, they help. That bait, I started downsizing my baits because I found that when I was up in the 4-inch range of those baits, I was having a lot of hits, but the bass couldn't swallow it very well. Especially if I'm fishing moving water. If that water, the current was moving, they'd hit it, but there'd be nothing there a lot of times. So I got those baits made because it's real hard to find 3/0 hooks with 1/4 inch weight, and I would throw that kind of in the same fashion that Brad is. I'd probably throw a lot of times even maybe towards the banks and look for weed lines, especially after what's happened this year. This year I've learned a lot. Before I avoided the water a lot of times when it was this bad. And I would wait till it cleared up and water got down. So a lot of times I didn't get the kayak out as often as I was wade fishing before work or something. And so now from what I've learned this year so far, I'd be throwing at a lot of weed lines also. I kind of avoided that before and always threw rocks. Rock. You always hear smallmouth and rocks. And I learned a lot that they'll move off those rocks, especially if the water's high and the temperature's still not that hot outside, that they'll still stay shallow. So, I've like where I caught that 20 with Brad. It wasn't even slow. It wasn't fast moving water at all. It wasn't your typical spot of the section of river that you would think one would be. He was behind cover that we thought he would be, but the water wasn't moving fast at all. I mean, it was actually really, really slow. I caught that fish and fought him, and I stayed right where I caught him. Like, I didn't move down river at all. So,
Yeah, you've actually taught me a lot just fishing the river with you for the couple times we've been out this year, and that weed line thing, man, has been like money.
yeah, it's not normal for them because I fished it before, and I just never had any bites, and I didn't really put two and two together until how bad our water's been this year with it being so high and so muddy. And literally, Brad, I'm learning while you're learning, man. Like when that day we went, I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work, man. But I've been chucking baits at weed lines, and I've been catching 17s and 18s, and then it was kind of crazy, and it worked when we went on that one trip. So, and we were in a completely different section. So,
and it also makes sense because people say like water with weeds around it, it's clearer water, and then it has more oxygen as well. So it makes sense when the water's up that those fish like to go towards the weeds.
Yeah. When I was fishing it, something that I kind of figured out why it's kind of doing that too. It acts as like a giant filter because I would get out of my boat once in a while to stretch my legs out because I was in water that was only like maybe 2 feet deep, 1.5 feet deep. And as I would walk through it, man, all that dirt would fall off those weeds, and I would cloud up everywhere I was walking, like even worse. I mean, it was already dirty, but I was making it worse by walking through those weed beds and everything. It was pretty crazy. And like you said, I would see like clear water all within the weeds, but everywhere else, man, it's muddy. That's pretty crazy. So
it's awesome. Like I'm glad like we've like figured that out. Because I did catch a couple nice fish last week doing that same tactic.
Wow, good answers, man. I know you guys are a lot more experienced on that river than I am, but I usually just throw the big Joshies and big Joshy crawls. I've done pretty good.
Can't go wrong with the big Joshies, man. Those are awesome too.
Those Columbus guys rip it up in the rivers with those baits, man.
Yeah. I like them too, man. I've caught a lot of different fish off of them. So they're good. Crappie love them. Crappie, saw guy, bass, everything loves them big Joshies, man. I like them a lot. Okay, so those are good answers, man. So let's try one more scenario. Say we're in the middle of summer. Let's try maybe the first couple weeks of July, and you got some time after work or after your honey-do list in the afternoon, 4:00. The sun's been beaten down on. You guys arrive at like a community farm pond, like a community pond, like a park pond. The sun's been beaten down on it all day. Say the water's probably in the mid to upper 80s. It's a high pressure place because it is a park pond. What would you guys start throwing? Say you had the rest of the night to fish too, you could fish till dark. So how would you go about fishing a pond like that?
What's the water clarity? What would you say?
I'd say it's probably 4 or 5 foot visibility, and it's weedy. Maybe there's some cattails on the one edge of the pond. Maybe there's some lily pads on the other end of the pond. Most of the water is wide open though, but there's several feet of visibility.
I would start out with throwing a Texas rigged worm, probably pumpkin seed. It's my favorite color for clear water. Pumpkin seed, Berkeley power worm, 7-inch, or like a Gary Yamamoto Cinco, Texas rigged.
Gotcha.
If it's really weedy, I like to keep
finesse fishing. Basically.
Yeah, I like to put the weight down and then hold it down with the bobber stop above the weight, so like that weight don't go up and down your line. You know what I'm saying?
Oh wow, okay.
So it makes it a lot less likely to catch more weeds when you're fishing in that scenario.
Oh wow. What about you, Josh?
I would probably start out throwing a swim jig along the weed line still to see if they're sitting like way far back, especially since you said it's hot. I'm going to assume that they're probably going to be deeper than just the edges. I did recently start trying to throw, so this would probably be something I would throw today if this scenario was happening right now. But trying out a Tokyo rig, Tokyo rig is like a extra wide gap hook with a swivel on it, like a 3-way swivel, and on one end it's got this wire. The other end your line hooks up in line with the hook itself, right? Mm-hmm. And you put like bullet weights. Well, you put your bullet weights on together where the cone is pointing down, and then the other one, you could put 2 of them on top of each other. So a lot of times exactly. Nice. But I actually added another weight, Brad, on top of that one, where the wider part sits on top of the wide part. So it's almost like, what it's kind of intended to do is go through with least resistance of that weight, and then it's going to be able to come out with the least resistance because of the shape of those weights being butted up against each other like that. I tried it the other day. I'm not good at it. It's kind of because it's a flipping style bait, and you kind of have to have your line like more up and down as opposed to an angle. If you have it at an angle, it doesn't work properly.
Kind of like a TRD.
Exactly, because that weight's going to come up kind of weird. And if you're kind of at an angle where you have to bend that wire, it hooks onto a lot of weeds. So you have to kind of pop it up out of there. So I wasn't fishing it exactly right. I think we were at Indian Lake when I tried it. We were in a really, really weeded area. And I think I got tapped a few times on it, but it's something I kind of would work on, and that would be a good place to work on it. So... But yeah, that's what I would try. And then if all else fails, I'd be chucking a frog all over the tops of the weeds. I like black frogs a lot. I use like live target, just your regular hollow body frog, and I trim down the skirts on them. And that was a really good bait. I use like Kaiser a lot of times when it's springtime hit. So
Wow.
You guys ever use the Zoom horny toads?
No. I haven't used that yet.
Chad Hoover talks about them quite a bit on his YouTube channel. I was just curious. I just recently bought some, and I'm going to give him a shot on the river because he absolutely kills it with smallmouth on those things. And it's just like a soft plastic frog that you reel in on top water weightless. So,
wow.
Figure I'd give it a try.
I think I have a couple packs of soft plastic frogs like that. I just don't know. I'm not familiar with what kind of hooks to get for it. I've seen some different setups where you can get those, almost like the swim bait hooks, Brad, like the belly weighted hooks. Some people put those on them and they make them kind of sit down in the water a little bit. They still float, but those baits it'll kind of put the butt of that frog down in the water a little bit, so it gets real good action with the feet.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I don't have much experience with frogs, so.
Yeah, I've thrown frogs and have had some success with them. I know if I was to hit that pond, I like June bug Cincos in a farm pond, and I would just slow roll that sucker along the bottom, probably in the deeper water, because if it's the heat of the day, it's probably going to be pretty hot. They're probably going to be in deeper water. I know as the day went on, you got the evening bite, and I started to notice some top water. I'd probably throw like a whopper plopper or just a regular popper. Like I used poppers in farm ponds plenty of times and caught plenty of bass with them. Another thing I like to use in ponds are those TRDs. The peanut butter J works pretty good.
It's that color.
Oh yeah, that's a great color, man. I love TRDs. The Ned rig is like a lifesaver since I discovered it. I've had bad days turned into good days because I switched over to the Ned rig, and it's a really awesome bait. Okay, so I like that, man. Let's go over one more. All right, one more scenario.
Real quick, Zach. I want you to try out the Z-Man ticklers. It's like a TRD, but it's got little tentacles on the.
It's called the hula sticks.
No. There's a smaller version too. And if he likes the TRD, the hula sticks are bigger than the TRD.
Oh,
okay. Try the Z-Man ticklers. There's it doesn't have the ridges around it like the worms do, like the TRDs do. But I've used those on the rivers and the lakes and gotten bitten a lot. I think you'll like them because it's a Ned rig bait. It works pretty good.
Is it these right here?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
They kind of look like a tube a little bit.
Yeah.
Man, that would be awesome on a Ned rig.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically like a Ned rig, but instead of the lines, it's got little bumps all over it, and, and it's got like little frills at the end of it. You just have to check out a picture of it. It's kind of hard to explain, but man, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely have to check them out, man.
Yeah, I'm showing them on the video because I know this is going to go on YouTube, so people can see the pictures that I'm showing on the YouTube.
Ticklers.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome, man. So that's sweet, man. So last scenario, all right? Say we got a large lake. I want to say, think about size of East Fork, and it's in the middle of July. It's like holiday weekend, right? It's like 4th of July weekend, and you got jet skiers, you got pleasure boaters, you got all these crazy people that are just tearing up the main lake. I say it's rained the night before, so that you got muddy water, maybe 2 foot of visibility. You're not going to be able to fish the main lake. You're probably going to have to stay out and off the main lake. What would you guys throw? Well, how would you guys start your day out on that lake?
That's a tough one, man. I'd probably treat it almost exactly like how I fished Callan today, honestly. Since you said the water's up and muddy, I think those fish push up against the banks.
Yeah.
To get away from debris and I don't know, whatever, It's kind of like somebody blowing up their home and they don't know where else to go, so they go to shallow under trees to get shelter.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wouldn't fish the coves in the summertime because I feel like they're harder to find in the coves. Those coves get a lot hotter water temperature wise than the main lake does.
Yeah.
And which was another thing I ran into at Callan Lake today. The coves were 4 degrees hotter than the main lake was. So I stayed on the main lake and had success. I couldn't find any bites in that 77-degree water. So I don't know. I'd probably just fish the banks, black and blue, since the water's up and muddy, like you said.
Yeah. Chatterbait.
Probably
Chatterbait Brad.
Something with vibration, though. I mean, heck, spinners. I know Justin would probably throw a rooster tail. I don't know. Anything that makes a lot of noise. Anything that's black and blue.
I love rooster tails, man. I use them in all kinds of situations on the lakes and the ponds, and I've caught about every fish that swims on a rooster tail, man.
Yeah, they're a good search bait on the river. So say you're trying to find the fish on a river, you just keep casting that out until you finally catch one. Then you know where they're at. They're easy to move. They're easy to reel in. They're quick. It's basically power fishing. So,
wow. So what would you do, Josh?
I'd throw a jig into cover. From what I kind of heard and understood, just trying to research that after this spawn, the bass will move out, and then they'll move out deep, and then half of them will move back in shallow, and half of them stay out deep, approximately.
Usually it's the smaller ones that go shallow again.
Yeah, I mean, they'll say the big ones will go too. It's just probably a little bit easier to fish for the big fish in deep water as opposed to shallow water, just because shallow water is hard to fish, man. When you're fishing a lot of cover, there's so many spots when you think about it. If you're going to find bass in deep water, you're going to find them in one spot, a couple spots probably. But when you start fishing bank lines, man, you could throw a bait and it could be 2 feet, 3 feet from a giant bass and you have no idea. And you might have went right by it, So a lot of times the jigs that I've been actually having the most success with, and it's because we've had dirty water. The jig that I've threw today has a rattle on it, and I've tried to throw the same exact jig with no rattle this year, and I haven't had any success with it. As soon as I add a rattle to it, they're picking up on it. They can hear it, and they're hitting it. So, especially in the river, man. The river is crazy because I'm bouncing it off the rocks. I would hit rocks occasionally today in the lake, but you're going to hit some silt here and there more often than you do in the river. But yeah, I'd throw a big jig with some weight to it so it can kind of get through the weeds and make sure it has some sound. And if it's dirty water, I'm going to do something to brighten it up. Either I'm going to use black or I'm going to dye it. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I would fish probably a black and blue jig if it's muddy, or something maybe chartreuse, like a chartreuse swim bait or a spinner. Also, bright yellow. I like to use in muddy water like that. And I'd probably be fishing the points coming off without going into too deep of water. If we got jet skiers running and all that stuff, I'll probably try to stay away from them. But I would try to target that deeper water off the points and off the drop offs. Maybe use my fish finder and try to find some deeper fish. So yeah, I just wanted to try this little game today. I kind of thought it up just right before the podcast, and it kind of gives us an opportunity to go over different scenarios and what we would do in different scenarios.
Oh, I know our listeners will like it because we've been getting feedback that they like our podcast because we go into the detail about fishing. So
yeah,
that's
what I wanted this episode and every episode to be about, man. Is we talking about fishing, man?
Yeah,
yeah,
it's awesome.
That's how I learn, man. I just listen, watch videos. I've researched it on the internet. I didn't grow up fishing at all. I just started bass fishing like 9 years ago. And got a kayak a few years after that, and I hadn't really ever bass fished. I mean, I'd gone occasionally here and there, but never like really went to do it. Just went with a buddy and was like, here's a rod, chuck this, lipless crankbait around, and I never would catch anything. So everybody does different stuff, man, and I'm finding out this year, the more like I'm learning more, the more I get out of my comfort level, man. Like, because I'll chuck swim baits all day long and I catch fish on them. So, but I'm not learning very much by doing the same thing over and over again. So it's nice to have podcasts like this and, YouTube videos. You can get out there and listen and learn. And, everything I've learned is from somebody else. I'm not a great fisherman by any means, especially when it comes to lakes. But
I'm not either, man.
So I'm learning, and like it's kind of fun to get out here with these tournaments and make friends like you guys, and like it's kind of funny is the three of us were all part of the same forum for years ago, and here we all now are talking on this podcast about fishing. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
it's a small world.
Yeah. I started off catfishing. I was a big catfisherman for years, and I just got into bass fishing maybe 4 years ago, and I got a kayak. This is my 4th year on a kayak, and I like it, man. I'm still learning. There's a lot that I'm learning. I'm doing a little bit better at the tournaments this year than I did last year, and I love this sport, man. I love being on a kayak. Not just bass fishing, but just enjoying the day, maybe catfishing. It's a little bit of everything. It's great, man. So, is there anything else you guys really wanted to go over before we finish this up?
Yeah, we'll ask him what we ask all of our guests. So, what was your first kayak?
My first kayak is the only kayak I've ever owned, and it's 2014 or 15-ish, around there, Jackson Coosa HD. I never owned anything else. I saved the money. My wife and I both bought Jackson's. She's got her little Cruise 10, and we've actually bought it from Loveland Canoe and Kayak, and we love that facility. They treated us right. They're good people down there. They were super nice. So, if you're in the market for a kayak, please check them out. Mark is a really good guy. Jason's a really good guy. They treated us with a lot of respect, man. There was no pressure when we went. He helped hook us up, man. And, the rest is history. I'm looking hopefully maybe next year to try to get not a Coosa, but maybe a big rig FD.
That'd be awesome.
Just from I'm struggling a little bit on lakes, especially when it gets windy. Like today, the wind picked up for a while, and I was having trouble staying where I wanted to. I kept getting pushed into a real rocky bank. It wasn't anything scary or anything. It just,
frustrating.
You're getting pushed out of your target zones and
into your target zones.
Yeah, you throw into target. Yeah, so
you actually did it the right way, unlike most of us kayak fishermen. You got the right kayak the first time, whereas me and Zach spent thousands of dollars going through 3 kayaks to find the one we that fit us the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other question we ask everybody else is, what is your craziest story that you have on the water?
So I think the craziest story I have on the water, it's not real crazy. It's kind of cool and kind of freaky at the same time. I used to wade fish a lot, and that's what I kind of got me into bass fishing, actually, was wading. And I used to wade this certain creek, and it's a wildlife area. And I am wading down the bank line, and I actually had just gotten out of the water, so I'm like right on the edge. And I'm like, what is that sound? And I just hear it, and it's this crazy buzzing sound. And I'm like, dude, are those bees? Like, am I near a swarm of bees? What's going on? And it's just loud, and it's like obnoxiously loud, and it's like right behind me, and I keep turning around and I don't see anything, and it's still there. And so I kind of glance down behind me, and there's this tiny baby deer laying 2 feet behind my feet, like right there on the ground. Like I'm almost stepping on this thing. It's completely alive. It is literally bedded up right next to the creek, sitting there. And I'm like, and what I was hearing was just the flies buzzing around the deer. You know, and the baby deer's ears are, you know, swatting the flies around, and she realizes I'm standing there, right? I can see her visually. I try to take a picture of this, and this is where I realized how much camouflage deer truly have. And that I tried to take a picture of that deer that was bedded down, and the more I got close to her to try to take the picture, the more she kind of hunched down, and I could not get a clear picture of this deer. Yet I could see it clearly with my eyes. It was wild, man. And what I started freaking out then, I'm like, where's mom at? You know, I'm like, has mom got eyes on me? Like,
Yeah.
I don't see her anywhere, and she's got to be close by. And if this deer makes, a little bit of noise, I might be in a little bit of trouble. So that's probably it was pretty cool experience, kind of, crazy that I walked up upon him, basically almost a newborn baby deer that close, So.
Yeah, that is cool. It is a crazy story. Well, I don't have anything else unless Zach does, so.
I think we're good to go, man. It's a pretty good episode. I know this. What do we got coming up here? Next is the Buddy Bass, the Buckeye Trail tournament. You guys want to do that?
Yeah, I'll be there. I don't know if I'm doing the tournament. I'll be there because the meetup for Paddle and Fin. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, the Paddle and Fin meetup. That's on the 6th at Cowan Lake, right? What time does that start?
I don't know, but it's the same day as the Buddy Bass tournament. So in the Buddy Bass, you can fish Cowan Lake.
Oh, great, man. Yeah, that'll be fun. I plan to go out there. I think I might camp out there that weekend and just fish the whole weekend.
Yeah. They plan on camping out there Saturday, I think. So Saturday night. But, yeah, Loveland's going to be down there. We're hoping to do some demos down there, too. So.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be a demo day. Forgot about that.
Nice.
That's going to be fun. So
that would be pretty cool.
Next weekend on June 29th, right, Brad, is Loveland Canoe Kayaks doing another demo day down at the facility. Hopefully the river clears up. So if anybody's in the market to try out some kayaks, they carry Bonafide and Jackson kayaks. I think Jason will have his Blue Sky out there too. And he's super cool about letting anybody get in that boat, man. So if you want to try it out, get out there and try it.
I think that's from 5 to 7 p.m.
Yep.
So, Zach, you should make it out there and try the Blue Sky out.
Oh, yeah, I know. I fished with him a few times. He's offered to let me on it, but
you should do it, dude.
I tried it, yeah.
It's pretty life-changing.
Yeah. My biggest thing, man, you got one of those in a tournament, so you have a bass on the board. I'm afraid it'd flop off and go right in the water, Yeah,
I know what you mean. I had that happen today, too.
Yeah, that would suck. I like where in my Hobie I put the board down like between my legs sometimes if I'm worried about it flopping around. And with most kayaks they got the sidewalls on them that kind of help you control your fish a little bit. But yeah, it's an interesting boat for sure. People should check it out if they're interested in it. But I guess that's all we got going on tonight. I know next episode, I'm trying to get Steve Coomer on here. He was supposed to be on this week, but he had some personal issues come up, so we had kind of had to reschedule him. So I'm hoping to get him on. I've got a few other guests lined up. We got some big announcements soon. We can't talk about it yet, but me and Brad's got some things in the works, and I've got some things in the works. Brad's got some things in the works. It's a lot of stuff going on with the podcast right now we can't really talk about, but there might be some changes coming. But one thing's for sure, Yak Legion is going to stay. And that's for sure, man. I love doing this podcast and hanging out with you guys on here, and that's what we're all about, man. We're all about sharing the good word of fishing, the good word of kayak fishing, and I know we got a lot of episodes planned, like you mentioned earlier. I wanted to do for all gigging off of kayak, turtles. Want to talk to some of these guys that duck hunt off their kayaks, that build these big blinds on their kayaks and soup them up. I want to get into some of that stuff too. So there's a lot to come.
That's my brother Cody. He's also a kayak fisherman, but he hasn't been out.
Kinda. What, he's been out there twice?
That guy's awesome. He's better than this guy.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, subscribe to that guy. Yeah. Awesome. I seen the fish he was catching, dude. They were huge.
Oh, we have an unexpected guest come on the podcast this week. So that's Cody Hanks, my brother. Go follow him on Instagram.
Yeah. Man, he can stripe a yard, can he? I've seen his mowing pictures.
Yeah. Yep.
He's pretty good striping there. On a zero turn, I guess. Well, all right, man. I guess that's enough. Thank you guys for listening to the Yak Legion podcast. There's a lot more to come and tight lines.
And don't forget about our giveaway, guys. And thanks, Josh, for coming on with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Have a good one, all.
You too. Take care.